Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Severe MMA preview show. I'm not Ian O'Neill. I'm Sean Sheehan today for the UFC 286 preview of Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards, the third meeting of the pair. Sometimes we forget they actually had a fight way back, but maybe we'll get into that today, as well as the second meeting. Ian is in Ireland at the moment, so he's not in Canada in front of all his recording equipment and all of that. He's on holidays. So the trio are here to do it after the two lads did it last week. You know me, I'm just a big timer. I just come in for the big events. So that's why I'm here today. And we're going to talk about these big events. Harry, Spencer, how are you? What's level of anticipations? Harry, you're over in London town right now in the midst of all of this. What's your level of anticipation for this card? And is there any buzz around the town or anything like that?
So there's far less buzz around the town than there was for the March card last year. I personally think this is a pretty good card, 15 fights, which we've talked about ad nauseum as being maybe one too many fights. But I think for these types of fight cards where it's just an entire showcase of sort of UK and European fighters, it's fine to sort of do this every once in a while. But my personal anticipation is quite high. I'm very excited for the main event. I think the co-main's great. There are some stalwarts of European MMA on the card that will get to answer some questions about where they are in their careers. We have big questions from Muhammad Makayev, and I'm very interested in some of the individual fights that I'm sure we'll get into. But in terms of sort of global or even just around London, I'm not getting asked questions by people at the gym or whatever, like, oh, what do you think? Who have you got? What's this? Whereas for the last couple of pay-per-views, I haven't had people stop coming up to me and talking. Now, I think part of that is, and maybe I'll pass over to Spencer about what he thinks, but I feel like some of that is both Leon and Kamaru are great characters, but maybe don't display that character super well. And I think that plays into some of the lack of promotion. And equally, we haven't heard a ton from Justin Gaethje. Rafael Fiziev isn't a massive talker. And then, you look down the card and there's Gunnar Nelson, Brian Bahrain, and neither of these guys are going to jump on and create a fight. So, yeah.
I wonder, is that, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on as well, Spencer. Like, we seem to say that for every card now. And I wonder, is it just a thing that, like, no one's really concentrating on in any massive way in terms of the UFC, in terms of promotion, in terms of ESPN or anything like that. Now, I think it was a little bit different for the John Jones card late, and we always talk about it maybe happening later. But I want to ask you, Spencer, about that just before we move on to the fights, because it's I don't want to dwell on it for a long time because it's something we'll just kind of end up complaining about. But there used to always be the thought before that pay-per-views outside of North America weren't ever going to be as successful or as buzzy, if you want to use that word that I just made up, as other ones, because you don't have the New York media or the LA media or whatever it might be. And maybe it's even, and I'm sure there's like maybe a Montreal media or whatever that, but like it's even easier for them to travel up to Canada or travel around in America, whereas they're probably not going to London. I'm sure some of them are, or maybe going to Australia. Do you think that still exists, or has the ESPN deal that we know they have guaranteed money? Like, do the UFC even kind of care about that anymore? And we see kind of the war against the media, which Dana White has been putting on for his whole career, but more so lately. Has that kind of caused this maybe lack of promotion or lack of anticipation for lots of cards recently?
I think part of it is what Harry said, that Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman, and to a lesser extent the guys further behind them on the card, don't carry the same gravity. This fight, for whatever reason, as great a fight as it is, the main event, doesn't carry the same weight as even Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski, which was pound for pound, two champions versus each other, carried that just heft of big questions, big anticipation. This one doesn't. Locally for Harry, I understand it not being as big. We don't have those bigger names in London. Leon Edwards, as great as he is, isn't the same level of star as Paddy Pimblett. Doesn't carry the same kind of pull as even Molly McCann, really. And I think this is an opportunity for him to change that. Globally, I think it's a piece of all of the things that you've said. I think there's a little bit of it being an international show. So time zones and availability of athletes always makes it more difficult for North American media. The UFC, even though it is a global brand, and we've especially seen that through these first 3 months, 4 pay-per-views, 3 of them being international pay-per-views, is a North American based company. the majority of its shows are here. The majority of the media that covers it is here. And so that certainly plays into it a little bit. And I think there's just a general fatigue, really. Like, we talk about it all the time, the three of us on various platforms that we have, various shows that we have, that you get into this cycle, and here we are. It's the second pay-per-view of the month. It's today, as we're recording it, March 15th. It's the fourth pay-per-view of the year. It's the 7th of 8 straight weeks of UFC events. Like, I'm the guy that's excited for everything. And even I have to sit here and be like, it's been a lot. It's a lot. It's hard to constantly turn around and get up for each next fight. And when you're coming off trying to build each fight into, like, the John Jones fight, everything after that is going to be just kind of a letdown, because that's the thing we're looking forward to in March, is the return of John Jones. 3 years away, all of that. As great as Merab and Petr Yan was last week, we saw that there was less interest. As great as this fight is this week, we see that there's less interest, because there's just the other part of it here in North America is that there's tons of other stuff going on. NFL free agency is kicked off. March Madness tips off tomorrow, so tips off on Thursday. And those are massive things that are just always going to garner more attention than the UFC does. And so I think this show is just sort of run into that confluence of all kinds of different things that are keeping it from getting the attention that up and down this fight card, there's interesting stuff that we should be talking about, but there's just not as much available space for it.
And I feel like it'll actually be the opposite here the later the week goes, because it's on pay-per-view here, and they're going to have to try to get money out of people. And I'm sure there's Premier League matches this week, and it'll be all over it and everything like that. So I think it will be a little bit different here, but we'll move on from that, because we're here to talk about the fights and preview the card. So we will do that. I would normally, whenever I'm talking about a big fight like Leon Edwards and Usman, especially when we have 25 plus 15 is 40 minutes of tape. But it is 40 minutes, isn't it? It was 15
39 minutes.
Yeah, 39 minutes. Oh yes, indeed. Yeah, indeed. 39 minutes. I would normally talk about the fight, but I want to start and talk about the mentality for a second, because I think mentality is a thing we never actually, intangible, my favorite word. We don't know, we don't know. Like, someone could have had a baby a week ago and have had no sleep. Someone could have had a baby 2 months ago and it was the best thing in their life, and they have improved as a fighter because of it. Someone could have had a death in the family. Someone could have won fucking 100 grand and be the happiest they've ever been. We don't know whether good or bad or indifferent, right? But for this fight, we can at least speculate, because the last time we saw the two of these people in an arena, one of them was sitting there like me here looking up at the lights, and the other one was saying, I proved you all wrong. He was roaring for the first time ever in his career. We heard his real voice, and I genuinely mean that. I genuinely mean we never heard Leon Edwards' real voice before that moment, and you know what? I don't even think we've heard it since, and we may never hear it ever again. He's just one of those guys, right? How does that change you as a fighter? Like, how does it change you mentally? How does it change you when you enter that 10-week camp, 8-week camp, or whatever it might be? From Usman's point of view, from Edwards' point of view, is Kamaru Usman going to train harder than he's ever trained before? Or was he not able to train a full camp because of the injuries that came out of the last one, because of his knee injuries, because of all of that? Is he not the same fighter he once was? Did he not want to spar because of that? Is he going to be a little bit different when he goes into the fight because he got knocked out the last time? And for Edwards, has this brought him to the next level? I was on with John Anik the other day. He said Teddy Atlas thinks when you win the title, it brings you up 20% as a fighter. Is that true? Or is Edwards saying, I've got there, I'm the best in the world right now, and he tapers off that 1, 2, 5%, and he's not the same fighter he was, and Usman comes in there and beats him? Harry, that's the question. There's a long-winded question now. The mentality side of it. What is your call on? What is your take? I know we don't really know, but for this one, we definitely can speculate because we've seen what happened in the last fight.
After that promo, I couldn't give a shit. Just let me watch it right now. Just wonderful. Look, I feel like the interesting part of this is if we look at the camps behind them, you have Trevor Whitman, the mastermind of Trevor Whitman, behind Kamaru Usman, and the people that fill in the blanks for Kamaru Usman are behind him. It feels to me like they're a grounded team. Whitman seems to be like, he has an air of the Alex Ferguson about him, where he knows exactly how to manage his man. He knows exactly how to get the most from his fighter to really garner them to perform and peak at the right times. Kamaru Usman is an elite level athlete. He also knows himself the best ways for him to peak. But, and we've all heard this from fighters before, especially when they've gone and been finished by a guy and then they go back in, there's an air of, I don't want this to happen again. There's an air of when Leon shows him that shot, shows him the jab to the high kick, is there going to be a moment where Kamaru's like, oh, fuck, here we go again? Is he going to have reflections? Or has he the mental fortitude to have his sparring partners throw that all the time at him during camp so that when it comes, it's just another combination again? Right? It's just another shot. That's an interesting question. For me, I am confident in saying Edwards and his team go back and they say, we had some fantastic moments in that fight. That first round, there was some really great stuff that we did. There's some really good footwork battles that we've done, and we'll get into the X's and O's, I'm sure, in a second. But I think they'll say, for 3 and a bit rounds, we were losing that fight. And yes, you pulled it out, and yes, you did it, and yes, look at me now, all of those things. But you're going to have people like Tom Breese, you're going to have people like Chris Meyer in the background saying, look, there are things we need to fix here, and there are things we need to go out and put a stamp on here. And I think that will change Leon Edwards' mind to not go in and have the arrogance of a champion, but instead to go in and be like, I need to prove a point again here, beyond all reasonable doubt that I am better than this man.
What do you think of that, Spencer? Because, like, I'll be honest, I haven't heard a single word from either Usman or Edwards since that night. Not one word. I haven't listened to Embedded or watched any of these. And I know you keep your eye on that a lot more than me, and maybe you've even spoken to them. I'm not sure. But what's your sense of the two of them, where their mentality is now?
So I was going to say that I wish we were taping this at our usual time later in the day today, because I would have talked to Kamaru Usman. I spoke with Leon Edwards yesterday. I can tell you, as Harry said, the wonder of Kamaru Usman, of how's that first look at that same side head kick rattle him or not. I posed that to Leon Edwards. And when I said, like, do you just go out there and throw it pretty early to give him a little bit of that, like, hey, remember this? His face lit up and he started laughing. And he said, there's a lot of stuff that he does that I could try to capitalize on. Obviously, he's not going to give away state secrets. This is where this man is at. He is past that fight. Genuinely. And as you said, that celebration and those moments, both in the cage and then backstage afterwards, was the first time we saw the full scope of Leon Edwards. We saw the elated and the sort of push back against the people that doubted him. Then we saw the tears and we saw the emotion of it, speaking with his mother on the phone and, Mom, we did it, and all of those things. He's past that fight. He set it aside. It's, yep, I'm the champ. It's happened. But now I've got the rest of this mission. He's locked in. I can tell you from my experience with him, from speaking to him yesterday, he's locked in. He's ready to go. I speak with Usman in a couple hours, and I'm fascinated to see where it's at. Now, he has said all the right stuff. He was on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, and Channing Tatum yesterday. It came out. And he said, look, I got to go out there and remind this guy that for those middle 3 rounds and most of the 4th, I was in full control. I had him broken. And then this thing happened. And it's just a thing that happened. It's very easy to say, right? And he's got the right people in his corner for it. Harry mentioned Trevor Whitman. He is my favorite coach, with all due respect and love to all the men that share their time with me for various things. Trevor Whitman's approach and philosophy about these things. And if you've watched Embedded, as I'm sure you will, because you want to see haircuts and people crossing paths with each other in the hallways of the hotel, he speaks about Trevor Whitman's understanding of the fact that these things happen and they're just moments in life and they're just moments in careers that actually are what really truly test you and make you the best, is so amazing. And so I can't imagine wanting anyone other than him in my corner as Kamaru Usman, especially in the immediate aftermath, but all the way along, that just says, yeah, great. You lost. Who else in this sport hasn't lost? Right? Here's Justin. Justin thinks he's been the best in the world for so long. He lost a couple times. Look where he's at. Still happy, still getting paid, still fighting for titles. We're good. You're still the best, champ. Let's go. Going to be really, really interesting. The thing that sits, the thing that resonates, and Edward said it when I spoke to him yesterday. I said it as my main question for this fight. You really just don't know how that knockout resonates, though, and how it lingers until they get in there, until that first one comes. Is it a thing where he gets gun shy now, and he's just got to be half second delayed on those shots, half second held back on throwing out that jab or that takedown attempt because he knows that thing is coming? It's so fascinating to me. I adore this fight, and I cannot wait to see this chess match.
I think there's two connected points that you made there. I agree with you 100%. I think Trevor Whitman is the greatest coach in the history of MMA. I just think he's a genius. I think he's brilliant. All his fighters always turn up, like win or lose, they always turn up well prepared and looking great. And the other side of it is, you said that he was broken in the fight, or there was the thought that Leon Edwards was broken. I don't believe that for a second. And the point I'm going to connect is Trevor Whitman used to do that job where Din Thomas was.
Yep.
And I guarantee you, if he was there, he wouldn't have said the idiocy that Din Thomas and he's idiot.
Yep. I mean, he clearly can't be broken when he comes out and does that, right? Like,
exactly. But
he said he had to snap back into it. Like, I asked him and just said, like, flat out, like, what's going through your head? Like, you get that restart. And I asked him about the Nathan Diaz fight. Because for him, he's 24 minutes up, everything is great, and he goes, I'm a minute away from sweeping this guy out of here. And it's my big win, and I let off the gas a little bit, and Nate catches you. And he was like, yeah, it wasn't so much that, as just like, I had to lock back in my corner in that between the fourth and fifth, lock me back in, and then we get that little restart, and he's shouting at me again. And I just went, God, I can't let this slip through my hands. Like, I've been waiting so long for this. This is the thing I've been waiting for. And I'm going to sit here and piss it all away without doing okay, I got to go. And he went.
I think the thing is,
Usman went to sleep.
It's not only, and that's a big point of it, but it's not only just that. Like, Usman was winning, from 2 to 4.5 or to 2 to 5. But he wasn't blowing him away. There was no 10-8s in there. He was winning because he got a takedown in each round, and he not stole the round. He deserved to win all those rounds, but it wasn't like it wasn't Merab versus Petr Yan by any means. Like, to say he was broken, he was losing, but he didn't break him like Merab broke Petr Yan. I thought that was ridiculous. And that brings me to the next point, and maybe the more technical points of it, because we've talked about all the mentality and all that. Like, is Usman going to be better? Is he going to be worse? Same with Edwards. I feel like those 3 middle rounds, forget about even the first round for a second, forget about the 5th round. Those 3 rounds in the middle, if Usman is 5% less of a fighter, does he end up giving up 1 to 2 of those rounds? That's the big question from here. That's the key, because, okay, we could have a big knockout from either man. Absolutely. We could have one person dominating. Absolutely. Maybe someone will fall off the face of the earth. Maybe someone has a bad shoulder like myself and TJ Dillashaw or something like that, and they end up, something happens. But in all likelihood, this is going to be a close fight over 5 rounds, or maybe a late stoppage like the last time. We've seen them fight before. It's been, as Spencer said, 39 minutes. Harry, tell us, what is, and first of all, is that 5% of a fall off from Usman enough for Edwards to win the fight if it's a close fight, or is there going to have to be something more?
So I think Kamaru Usman need not make any adjustments necessarily, because I think what we saw, and actually what was interesting to me, is we saw a mental lapse from both fighters. One cost Kamaru Usman the first round, where he gets taken down immediately into mount, has his back taken. And look, Leon's doing exactly the right thing, which is hunting for chokes. And clearly he's watched Ethan Crelinsten, or Tom Breese has watched Ethan Crelinsten and has stolen some of those choke details. But that's the first round gone, right? Like, fine, no problem. Then Leon starts to see that his efficacy is waning, and starts to see that some of the things that he drilled in camp is waning. And then we see a mental lapse from Leon. And then he says himself to Spencer, yeah, they lock me back in and I'm grand now. And I go out and I finish him and I knock him out grand, whatever. Kamaru Usman in portions of the third and the second, has Leon up against the fence, landing nice power shots. He's diversifying to the body well. He's catching up top. Some of them land on the gloves, some of them land on the arms, but there's no offensive work coming back from Leon. Those are the moments Kamaru has to capitalize on. And equally, those are the moments that Leon has to do better in. My thoughts for Leon's adjustments here, and I'll just pull up my notes. My thoughts for Leon's adjustments are this. I like him in southpaw. He was causing problems for Kamaru in southpaw. He was winning the outside foot battle really well in southpaw. And he'd stolen something from Alexander Volkanovski. And frankly, he needs to steal more from Alexander Volkanovski. And what that was he's turned the right foot all the way in. Now, why has he done that? Because it rotates his hip all the way over. And if Kamaru was to shoot on that right leg, it's already turned in so he can sprawl heavy on it, take that right knee away from Kamaru, post on the head, and defend to the best of his ability that initial single leg or double leg takedown. The piece I'd like Leon to add on primarily is dealing and frustrating Kamaru's lead hand when he's in southpaw and Kamaru's in orthodox. We saw that with Volkanovski. He was just pouring at the hand of Makhachev over and over and over again. Why? One, because Makhachev now can't use that hand. Two, there's a jab coming from Volkanovski at any moment. And three, if that hand's being disrupted and adjusted and moved all the time, you can't shoot with it. So all of those notions for Leon Edwards are things that I want to see. The other thing I want to see is more feints for the back teep. Immediately in the first round, he throws a back teep naked. Kamaru catches it, looks at him and was like, do that again and bad things are going to happen to you, right? Those are things that I think need setting up from Leon Edwards. And the third and the last thing, again, is stolen from Volkanovski, is use your jiu-jitsu to get back up. He did a great job in the first, and it didn't happen as much throughout the fight, but in the first round, Kamaru takes him down. He accepts close guard for a second, and then he's collar tying. He's looking for shoulder crunches. He's looking for sumigashi sweeps, and eventually he manages to get butterfly hooks, elevate Kamaru, gets to a turtle, runs himself back to the fence, and that's where we see him counter for his own takedowns. Those things, I think, are primary keys, and a secondary key that I'd like to see is threaten your own grappling.
I think that's a big key as well, him threatening his own grappling. But the question I want to pose to you, Spencer, like, is Usman going to revert to type here? Like, is it going to be a massively grapple-heavy Kamaru Usman performance we see? Because, like, he got knocked out the last time. And, he, you know, if you really, really, really melt that down to its core, you can't get fucking knocked out if the other lad's on his back, unless it's an up kick or something like that. But you get me, like it's
for the most part.
Complicate this, but I like that's my kind of feeling here. Usman, whether it's successful or not, I don't know. What's your kind of take on that?
So first, you posed the question to Harry of if the 5% decline from Kamaru Usman is enough to really sway things.
So he just avoided that question very well there. Yeah.
He did well. The point, the side of it that I think about is, what if we just get a better Leon Edwards? Like, what if the guy that last minute, that last kick, even that first round, is the guy that carries throughout the day? I do think we are going to get wrestle heavy, wrestle often, wrestle early Kamaru Usman on Saturday. It is the right path to victory for him. Now, whether you want to say he started to fall in love with the hands, he got a little bit too boxy, working with Trevor Whitman, getting the late finish of Colby Covington, the knockout of Gilbert Burns, the knockout of Jorge Masvidal, and just, you know, started getting into that pattern that we often see with wrestlers when their hands start to develop of, I'm always going to have my wrestling, but I can box these guys up. I think he comes out and wrestles right away to sort of it's the way to remind Leon Edwards, right? You put him on his back. As you said, you can't knock me out down here, but also you're not getting up. You're not doing anything. And if you do get up, I'm going to put you back on the canvas. I think that's the approach. I think that's the mindset. Going to be really interesting to me to see. Harry's disagreeing with me, and I love this. I want to tag him in here. Let's go.
Go on, Harry.
I just can't see it. Like, I think that Kamaru is a smart fighter, but he's got a hell of an ego. You remember the Black Zillions tough version? He's fucking yapping.
No one watched that.
And he's giving it, and he's at the side of the cage, and he's screaming at lads, and he's giving it the fucking I am and the big. And that man couldn't throw a jab back then. Like, yes, he's matured, and yes, under Whitman and whatever, but that guy is still in him. That guy is in him. And I feel like that he looks at people like John Jones, he looks at people like others, and he wants to take the fight to people. Is he going to be purely efficient? Is he going to be pure game plan? I don't think so. We've not seen it in the last little while. And in MMA, we're talking about the evolution of fighters. We're talking about the evolution of game plans. I don't think Kamaru is comfortable anymore purely wrestling or purely grappling. I could be wrong. And if I'm Trevor Whitman, that's exactly what I'm telling him to do, right? Is I'm coming out and my knees are going to be shredded in the first 45 seconds because I'm shooting like a madman. But just to address, I'm going to pass it over to Shawnee because I want to hear his thoughts too. I don't know how much better Leon Edwards can be, because I think we have reached, and I think this for both guys, I think from a tactical advantage, both guys can employ changes for sure. From a technical advantage,
Yeah.
I don't know that we get much more from either fighter.
Yeah, I don't think Leon Edwards has levels to go where everything improves, but from that tactical, from that approach, from that just throwing and doing more, those middle 3 rounds, you sit there watching it and you go, I mean, you heard the importance of it in his corner every round, right? What are you doing, son? You've got to go. You've got to throw. If he's more active, it's a more interesting fight to me.
I'm not sure about that either. Like, I think it's easy to say that, and it's maybe easy to do that in the first round. Once the fight settles, if you're just no, let me rephrase this. If your opponent is a little bit better than you, I was going to say if you're a little bit worse than your opponent, but that's unfair. It's impossible. What are you supposed to do? Like, and that's the issue for Leon Edwards, right? Because I said on the podcast the weekend, we put out the little chart that Leon Edwards is the Swiss Army knife. Like, he's not the best striker. He's not the best jiu-jitsu player. He's not the best at anything. He's just the best all-rounder. He's a brilliant all-round fighter. What me and Harry talk about in Speaker's Corner all the time. The problem is, so is Usman, but he has, I think he's a better jab than you, even though your jab is good and your all-round striking maybe a little better, and he's a way better wrestler than you, even though your wrestling is very good as well. That's a big problem for him. And the question I posed a second ago, if Usman is 5% worse, the reason I asked that is I agree with Harry. And you agreed as well, Spencer. I know you said there. I don't see it from Edwards. I think Edwards, and this is a compliment, it might not sound it, but I think he is one of the great overachievers in MMA. Like, some people, they have great athleticism, they have everything going for them, and they don't achieve enough. Like, even some of the greats, like I think Khabib is one. He went off into the sunset when he could have achieved much more. McGregor went off doing what he did. Loads of fighters have not achieved what they should have, given what they have. Leon Edwards has probably achieved 200% more than what he should have achieved with what he has, and that's an absolute credit to him and his training and all that. One part as well, you mentioned Tom Breeze. He's actually fighting in KSW this weekend, so that's, I think, maybe a little bit of an issue as well for Leon Edwards. But I digress on that for a second. I just think it will have to be Usman regressing into Edwards rather than Edwards taking that next step. And that sounds like a very shitty thing to say, because it's like, oh, sure, we've already taken the credit away from Leon Edwards for winning the fight if he does win it beforehand. But like, if you look at the first fight, and if it's anything like that again, it feels like Leon Edwards will either need Usman to be worse or need another knockout. Like, I can't see the knockout coming again. And I hope I'm wrong, and I might be wrong, and I was wrong the first time. We were all wrong the first time, I'm sure. But it's a very, it's a tactical fight that I think we can kind of break down relatively easily, because obviously we've seen 39 minutes of it before. But the reason I started with the mentality point of view is we just don't know what that has done. And maybe technically instead of tactically, as you said, the technique or the tactics can change maybe more than the technique. Maybe just to finish it off on this, if you have any final thoughts on how the fight will actually go. Like, first of all, maybe mine before I throw it over. I do think it will be a wrestle heavy Usman. I think Edwards will be a little bit more confident and maybe will stop the wrestling early in the first couple of rounds. And I think a big key there might be if he can get a takedown himself, if he can clinch, if he can get another body lock takedown, and then maybe a second one. If he gets a second one, I think it's fight on at that stage, because that is a big mental hurdle to come over. But my thoughts are it's going to be close for the first couple of rounds, and then Usman that wrestling is going to pay off and pay off and pay off, and he's going to end up winning a decision. But I don't know. I could be totally wrong. Very hard one for me to call. Spencer, I'll throw to you first. What do you think? How it's going to go, and who do you think the winner will be?
So I think fairly similar to you that it's going to be a wrestling heavy approach. I picked Kamaru Usman to win by decision, but as I said to Harry yesterday after I finished talking to Leon Edwards, he sure did do a real good job of convincing me that I'm wrong and he's going to come out and retain this title. Now, of course, I'll talk to Kamaru Usman here in a couple hours, and I'm sure he's going to do the same thing, sway me back into believing my decision pick and feeling really good about that and wanting to change to a stoppage for him. But I just think that wrestling is such a key. We saw it for 3 rounds, 3 full rounds before he kind of let off the gas. And even in the 4th, he was doing well. And I think, as we've talked about here, as long as he doesn't have that little lapse and as long as he stays on it, he's shown thus far through 39 minutes outside of one head kick, he's the better fighter more often than not. It's up to Leon to prove that's not true anymore.
Harry?
I'm just going to be contrarian just to offer a contrarian opinion. I feel like I took so much confidence from that Volkanovski-Makhachev fight because there are comparisons and parallels between Leon and Volkanovski. Volkanovski and Leon are both generalists of the highest order. Now, I think we can all say Volkanovski is of a higher order of generalism than Leon Edwards is, but neither have massive one-punch knockout power. Neither of them have like mad risk-taking sensibilities to them. They all just kind of do everything really, really well. I think if Leon can employ a slightly better tactical fight, a slightly better tactical approach, he can absolutely win here. Now, I don't think we're going to see a 50-45. I don't think we're going to see a sweepstake. There are going to be moments when he's going to find himself on his back. But the question is, can he react faster than he did in the first round where he was using his jiu-jitsu to get back up or to create scrambles and create space and then get back up? Is he then going to be able to threaten his takedowns? I think he can because I've seen him do it. We saw it in the first, and then Usman made some adjustments, and Leon did not continue to make further adjustments. So if he can focus and if he can approach this with a better tactical battle, I think he can beat Kamaru Usman. Will he? I mean, I'm picking Kamaru Usman by decision, so my answer is no. But I feel like he absolutely has it in his back pocket to do it.
One thing that just occurred to me there with what you said, and I'd never really thought of it before, but you're talking about Edwards' ability to adjust. I don't think he has the ability to, and not that he doesn't have it, but he doesn't have the ability to adjust as much as other people because he is that generalist. And he fights the same cadence, the same pace, the same way throughout the whole fight. And that's a general fight, whether it's wrestling or boxing or striking, whatever it might be. Yeah, and I think that's actually a massive point, because if it is close in the first round and a half, and then Usman starts to take over, it's almost impossible for him to adjust unless it's going to be a big 1 second, one moment. To turn the tide is very different, over 6 minutes or over 8 minutes or over 10 minutes rather than over 3 seconds, when you throw a big kick. So that's a very interesting thing to look at. With that said, it probably needs a Leon Edwards to be able to front run to actually win this fight, unless it is that big knockout again. So that's an interesting, and we will wait with bated breath for that main event on Saturday night. Let's move on. Let's talk about the co-main event between Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. I have one point to make in this, and I don't know whether it's something that'll actually matter or not. But we just mentioned the word generalization there, and most fighters at the top level of MMA these days have kind of, I love the phrase known weaknesses, right? But the two of these have known weaknesses. I would say Fiziev's cardio is definitely a weakness. We've seen multiple times now at this stage. The Bobby Green fight, and was it the Dos Anjos fight the last time as well in the 4th round where he got taken down, even though he did get the knockout in the 5th round, so maybe we can poo-poo that a little bit. And in Justin Gaethje, obviously, look, when Justin Gaethje is the old Justin Gaethje, his defense isn't the best, but that's obviously improved an awful lot, and his jiu-jitsu is as bad as fucking Israel Adesanya's. So will either of those things, Harry, be shown up? Like, I feel like if you look at Fiziev's fights and you see the way he has kind of wilted a little bit in fights, even though he did come back into the Adesanya's one, absolutely, and you're Justin Gaethje and you have the fights you've had down through the years. Maybe it's not as smart as recent fights, or maybe not as tactical, but do you go back to the old school World Series of Fighting Justin Gaethje and you put the motherfucking pace on this motherfucker, and he might win the first 2 rounds, but he won't win that third, and he mightn't finish the third, and you win? Is that the best way for Justin Gaethje to win this fight? Old school, like the Undertaker walking across the top ropes.
Is it the best way? God, no. Fuck no.
Yeah. Okay, go on.
Is it going to happen? I would almost bank on it. Like, I think Justin Gaethje, there's a couple of parts to this. One of these parts is Michael Chandler's kind of come in and become Justin Gaethje 2.0. And I bet Justin Gaethje fucking hates that. You're in this trifecta, this love triangle between Justin, Dustin, and Michael Chandler, right? Well, Michael Chandler has sort of bested both of them in that not only now has he got the McGregor fight, and obviously Dustin's had those McGregor fights, but not only has he got the McGregor fight, he's got a tough show. He's going to be in the headlines forever, and he'll be able to use whatever happens to capitalize, to move himself on in his career. He's going to be getting paid for tough. He's going to be getting paid whatever. Dustin is sort of the humble of the three, right? Just wants to stay hydrated, sell his hot sauce, be with his wife, and beat Conor McGregor. Fine. So if you're Justin Gaethje, you're like, well, I said to Trevor I wanted to be a champion. I got absolutely mauled by Khabib Nurmagomedov. What do I do now? And what you do now is you've been given a co-main event slot against a guy that's going to come forward and throw hands and feet at you. I just think Justin Gaethje is going to do Justin Gaethje things. I really, really do. I feel like he's going to go out and he's going to throw every single kitchen sink at him. And then he's going to go to B&Q in between rounds, get more, come back, and throw them at him as well. And I feel like this is relatively up and down. I just think Justin Gaethje is going to get in his face. The leg kicks are going to be destructive. Yes, he has to be wary of Fiziv's power. Yes, he has to be wary of Fiziv's variety. But Justin Gaethje is a troll. Like, his head is so fucking hard that he just takes them and walks through things and clubs dudes. And I don't know that Fiziv is going to be able to handle that as we get in. I really don't.
I think Justin Gaethje is like being criminally underrated coming into this fight. And myself and Graham were talking about on the podcast, and looking at the betting odds, I was like, Jesus, I'm not sure about this one. Spencer, you're someone who's watched obviously Gaethje with Fiziev as well for a long period or all of his career. Does he justify that price? Is he going to, like, just on Fiziev before we get to the match, before we get to Gaethje? Is he that good? Like, because we watch him and he's definitely good. He's definitely good, but is he that good to be that big of a favorite over Justin Gaethje?
We don't know. That's why we're going to find out. That's what we're going to find out on Saturday. He is right now. We see this all the time in the sport, right? He is right now one of those darlings. You're on the ascent. You haven't been his loss to, God, I can't remember his name, Magomed Mustafayev in his debut is far enough behind him now that we're not thinking about it. We're not talking about it. It's gone away. We've seen enough of him since that he is a darling. He's the next guy to come up, and it's his turn to ascend, and it's his turn to go over on the veteran guy that's been here for a while that yourself and several others are ready to move on from. But I mean, Jesus, it's Justin Gaethje, right? Like, the only people that have beaten him in the last bunch of years are 2 world champions. And before that, it's Dustin Poirier and Eddie Out. Like, this dude didn't lose for a long time, went through all of those car crashes and came out the other side like, great, I got to make a couple adjustments, but I can still be a human wrecking ball and get to the absolute apex of this sport, a place where Fiziev hasn't been. And so we'll find out Saturday if he's good enough. I understand the odds. I understand why he is, like, betting odds. Like, the reason these odds are set this way is because they want everybody to continue to be on this Fiziev train and then give people like you and me the opportunity to be like, but Justin Gaethje's being underrated here. So I'm going to jump on the Justin Gaethje side. They get it from both angles. We find out Saturday if Fiziev is good enough, if he justifies that price, and if he is a contender. He's said all the right things, right? Him and Arman Saryukin been calling for these kind of fights for a couple of years now. All these guys duck me. None of these guys want to fight me. Justin Gaethje's finally raised his hand and been like, cool, man, let's go. Now you got to back it up.
There's a tendency sometimes as well in the higher level fights to expect maybe a long fight and expect a decision. I mean, look, we could have that here, absolutely. As I just said earlier, maybe Gaethje push him into the third round. But I feel like there could be an expectancy here of this fight to go like 90 seconds and both of them to land the big shots and then one to take it worse than the other one, if you get me. And like, when I even say worse, like not as well as the other one, and the referee to step in. I feel like it could be one of those, it really could be one of those fights. What is your key, Harry, for you? Like you mentioned the leg kicks from Gaethje. Fiziev can kick really hard as well, and he's good defensively for the most part. I feel, and this is my thoughts on it, if Gaethje, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but if Gaethje fights the more tactical game, which he has been fighting over the last maybe, 5 fights under the brilliant tutelage of Trevor Whitman, and it's made him a better fighter, it feels like it's playing into the game of Fiziev a little bit, and he might win that fight, no problem about it, but it feels like it's giving Fiziev more of a chance to win it, or more of a chance to win it in the way he wants to win it. Whereas if you're Gaethje, I think you kind of have to make Fiziev earn it. What do you think is the key to that? Gaethje likes to, used to like to go forward, still likes to fight in the kind of the advancing pocket area, but like maybe a little bit more defensively sound. Whereas Fiziev, he loves those big long kicks. He loves coming in with the 1-2 or the combinations through the middle. How does that kind of play out? And what's the tactical call for you on it?
So for me, the person that wins this is the person that controls the pace. We saw with Merab and Petr Yan last weekend. Petr Yan is a fighter that wants to fight at his own cadence, at his own rhythm, and struggles when forced to fight at a higher pace, at a higher cadence. He had the gas tank to stick with Merab. He certainly wasn't gassing. He certainly wasn't exhausted by the end of it. He ran with him the whole way. But because Merab was 1 or 2 steps in front of Petr Yan the entire time, he wasn't able to fight and in the way that he wanted to, in the pockets that he wanted to. The same for Fiziev. If Fiziev is able to build a pace, build a rhythm, build a cadence, Gaethje might be fucked here. If he tries to come in and do the more point fighting style, more, okay, I have a set of skills and you have a set of skills. Let's paint this poetic, beautiful canvas together, and whoever is the more technical, skillful fighter will win. Gaethje needs to pick Fiziev up and put him through the canvas, and just be like, no, we're not doing this. I'm a train and I'm going to start. And when I get going, you're not going to stop me. And if Justin Gaethje is able to dissuade the pace, force Fiziev to fight on the back foot, keep away from those long, rangy, penetration-like kicks, take some of the sting away from the leg kicks of Fiziev by using pace, using pressure, using volume, using cage cutting, I think he will win. But if I am Justin Gaethje, if I'm Rafael Fiziev, sorry, I am looking to mix in everything. I'm looking to push him against the fence. I'm looking to grapple. I'm looking to clinch. I'm looking to foot sweep him from the clinch. I'm looking to knee. I'm looking to elbow. I'm looking to work the body as early and often as I possibly can. I am looking to get out of the way of those low kicks as much as possible and force Gaethje to fall into traps. Because if Gaethje does just walk forward, he will fall into traps. He's fallen into traps against everyone else he's fought when that happens. And if I'm Fiziev, I have to bank on my ability to put guys away. And it's a great fight. It's a great fight.
Yeah. I think it's a great fight either way. If it turns into a brawl, I think it'll be brilliant. If it's a technical fight, I think it'll be brilliant as well. And that's definitely one we're going to enjoy. Let's move on to talk Gunnar Nelson and Bryan Barberena. One key, I was analyzing this fight, looking back over the records yesterday before we record the betting show. And when you look at, betting on Gunnar Nelson, the first thing we all look at is submission. What's going to be the submission price and all that? And I think he's minus 130 to win by submission. But you look at Bryan Barberena, he got submitted in his last fight against Rafael dos Anjos. His last submission, his only other submission loss before that was 13 years ago. So it's not exactly an easy guy to submit. Plus, the key for me with Gunnar Nelson a lot of the times is he doesn't have exactly what dos Anjos has. That forward-going pace with good wrestling behind it. At times, Gunnar Nelson shows good wrestling, but he never has the forward pace. He is the tactical fighter we speak about all the time. He's not, the athletic beast, although he is very good athletically when it gets to the ground and all that, but he doesn't try to be that beast who will pick you up like Usman and put you on the ground. And that is, I think, going to be an issue for him here unless he can find the moment. Now, for Gunnar Nelson against the slightly lower caliber of fighters, he usually, in fairness, does find that moment. He usually does find the takedown at some stage, does find the ability to grapple, and does find the submission. Spencer, will he find it here against Brian Barberena? A guy who's maybe not, he's not up there. He's not Leon Edwards and Gilbert Burns, two of the recent opponents for Gunnar Nelson, but he's also a wily veteran, isn't he? And is it going to be as easy for Gunnar Nelson as other fights on this level have been in the past?
No, because I don't know that Gunnar Nelson has won a fight at this level in the past. Like, I was looking at this yesterday for one question for every fight, which will come out shortly after we're done recording this and will be out by the time people see this. I think Gunnar Nelson is overrated. I think Gunnar Nelson has gotten more recognition and push and hype for who he is, what he accomplished on the grappling scene, relationship to Conor, early start to his UFC career where it looks good and he's undefeated. But then once he started facing contenders and more well-rounded guys, he lost to all of them. He lost to Rick Story, Damian Maia, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Leon Edwards, Gilbert Burns. Now, obviously, those are top 5 guys. But, like, who's the best win? Are you going to tell me that it's Brandon Thatch, who never amounted to anything? Is it Albert Tumanov, who, look, probably deserves a second shot in the UFC, given everything he's accomplished since? But, like, wasn't somebody that was setting the UFC ablaze when he was there, right? He got released. He got not re-signed for a reason. And so I just wonder if there's a little bit of, like, we think of Gunnar Nelson with this esteem that he hasn't necessarily backed up yet. And Bam Bam's the exact opposite. We think of him as this blue collar dude. And I'm not saying he's a world beater, certainly because I have a relationship with him. He's been on a conversation with, spoke to him before this fight again. It's not that. He's not a top 15 guy even. But I mean, he is locked in, rock steady in that second 15, and he's going to give you hell every time you're out there. And he's the kind of guy that if Gunnar Nelson isn't locked in and ready to go and at the absolute best of his abilities, it's going to be a long night for Gunny. He may still win, but it's going to be a long, hard night. And so I think that minus money submission prop is a crazy number. I would stay all the way away from it. I haven't even started looking at my thoughts for the betting show yet, but yeah, keep me all the way away from it because I kind of think Gunny's just overrated.
I have Gunny plus 325 to win by decision, which I think is a great fucking price. But
I mean, that's a good number. That's a very nice number.
Harry, your thoughts on that? Gunnar Nelson overrated?
I see where he's coming from. I think Gunnar Nelson isn't overrated in the sense that MMA has passed him by. Injuries and everything else has caused him to deter. When you saw Gunnar Nelson when he came in, it was Damian Maia was still at large. And it was a fella could come in with a bit of jiu-jitsu. I mean, a bit of jiu-jitsu is very disrespectful, but a bit of striking, a little bit of wrestling, and a fuck ton of jiu-jitsu and wrap lads up and put them to bed early. You could do that. You can't do that in MMA in 2023. There's no like Chrome Gracie's not going to do it in his next fight out. We're seeing, I mean, it's really not. We're seeing, oh God, how can I forget? Mackenzie Dern isn't doing it in fights now. Damian Maia isn't fighting anymore. I don't know that there is somebody that's coming from a pure jiu-jitsu background and then trying to bolt on a game that is functional for MMA. I just don't think it works anymore. If you have a guy like Volkanovski, let's just say, and that's, whatever, somebody who's extremely well-rounded, or a Brian Ortega even, who's doing their best to build a well-rounded game, not a functional game for MMA, but a well-rounded game for MMA, and he then has sniper-like skills on the ground, fine. That's just an attribute that you can have. Kamaru Usman is building a well-rounded game with the specialization in wrestling, in grappling. Fine. I feel like the injuries and the time away have served Gunnar Nelson very poorly. Now, in the actual stylistic nature of this fight, Brian Barberena is a pressure fighter. He's going to come forward. He's not the massive hit, the most biggest hitter in the world, but he will land 50 shots on you a round. He'll pepper you. He's happy to fight in the clinch. We know that Gunnar Nelson is good in the clinch. I feel like the style and range management of Gunnar Nelson could cause Brian Barberena a little bit of problems. There's some leg kicks available for Brian Barberena if he wants them on a style like Gunny. But we also know that Gunny can crack. When he does step in, he can land well. And if he gets to dominant positions, there is absolutely no problem in subbing a guy like Brian Barberena. And that's not me being disrespectful to Barberena's jiu-jitsu, but Gunny's submission skills are still some of the best in that division. Make no doubt about it. If he gets to Barberena's back with time to work, Barberena has problems. It's just getting there without forcing Brian Barberena positions to keep his elbows tucked, reverse positions, and stay safe.
Gunnar Nelson has the exact same problems all the people you mentioned there. It's the in-between bits. Like, he's a bit of the Wayne Rooney's on him. He's both underrated and overrated at the same time. Like, his jiu-jitsu is like probably a little bit underrated for how good it is. And his striking, I think, is actually a little bit underrated as well. Can be very good at times. His power, at least, anyway, but it's the in-between bits that he can't wrestle to bring his jiu-jitsu into the game as much as someone with his jiu-jitsu ability should be able to. But you called out the people who've beaten him, and I'd say maybe aside from Rick's story and look, the Ponzinibbio one was eye pokes. We can take that away. It's Damian Maia, who's never going to submit, Leon Edwards, who's the champion of the world in the split decision that shouldn't have been in the split decision, and Gilbert Burns, who's also a fucking brilliant at jiu-jitsu. So, and the reason I say he's always beaten guys at that level is because he has every single person he has fought apart from Rick's story at the level above the very top level. He has beaten and almost always submitted as well. But I would tend to agree with you. I don't know if he'll do it this time. I don't know if that's 3 years out is no joke. Coming back against Takashi Sato and going to a decision.
Yeah.
Not that impressive.
The last good one was several years ago and he turned 35 in the summer. It just, at a certain point, this stuff just piles up, right? When you're not the guy that can go out there. If he had the Damian Maia wrestling component to this, if he had the RDA wrestling component to this and pressure component to this, he's going to run through Brian Barberena. That's why we all picked RDA to run through Bam Bam when they fought. The pressure's there, the wrestling's there. He puts him on his back and he can't get up. I just don't know that Gunny has that. And you mentioned the Takeshi Saito fight. That was going to be the last thing I sort of chimed in with, was I get it. It's a couple years away, coming back from injuries. But if you're Gunny Nelson, big bold letters, the way people think about you, that's a fight that you dominate and finish that dude. And it was harder work than it should have been, I think.
Indeed. We'll see how it goes, because it's interesting. I think it's good to have a good Gunny out there, because I think he's an interesting character and a nice guy, and he's
going to get a huge pop.
Will he?
I think so. People love this dude.
Okay.
They love him in London.
Last time I saw Gunny fight was in London, and he got one of the biggest pops of the night.
They love him in London.
That was in the middle of all the McGregor stuff, though. It's been a few years. Do people remember it?
I think so.
We'll see. Maybe. I hope so. Spencer, Jennifer Maia, Casey O'Neill. I know you've been big on Casey O'Neill. I think everyone that's seen probably Casey O'Neill for the last few fights is probably big on Casey O'Neill. Tell us about that fight. How do you think? It's a step up. It's a very interesting. When I saw this fight, I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting one." Casey O'Neill is the favorite, but not a massive favorite. Interesting fight.
It really is. And to me, it's about getting a read of where Casey O'Neill is at, both in terms of her continued development. She's been out for a year, coming back from a knee injury, but also just she was the darling of the division. She was the leader of that young pack before she got hurt. And in the year that she's been away, or 13 months that she's been away since her last fight with Roxanne Modafferi, Erin Blanchfield has rocketed past her. And a bunch of other people have come along and done we have a brand new champion in Alexa Grasso. Macy Barber's come along and put together a couple good wins. Natalia Silva's come on the scene. And so there's more people. And so this is a little bit of can Casey O'Neill claw back some of her position? Jennifer Maia is no joke. She is the perfect veteran test. Harry and I talk about these things on the takeaways all the time. She is the perfect veteran test for somebody like Casey O'Neill at this point. Because if you're meant to be a contender, and if you're ready to be in that mix with the absolute best of the flyweight division, you win this fight. And if you don't, that's perfectly okay. You're 23 years old and 10 fights into your MMA career. It's okay to lose to Jen Maya at this point, take a step back, reset, and then come forward. So it's going to tell us a lot about where King Casey is at.
Harry, Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze. Tell us about that one. What do you think?
I just have a sneaky feeling, and this could be my absolute bias of watching this fella fight, and I'll state that honestly. I have a feeling Dolidze gets it done here. Like, I feel like on the feet, Dolidze has more variety. Marvin defensively is pretty sound, but will be happy to try and take this fight down. And Dolidze on the ground, especially in close guard, which you'll never fucking hear me say about any other fighter, is maybe Chito Vera, is dangerous in close guard. He has a great ability to use like a semi-Williams guard type position where he's got some form of overhook and he tries to use collar ties and he extends his whole body, legend, extends his whole body and smashes elbows into the top of his opponents. He's got a perfect body type for it, long torso, long arms, long legs, and he wraps people up in that close guard and he hammers them with elbows when he gets there. All that does, as we saw against Jack Hermansson, it makes K-guard available, transitions into calf slicers, leg attacks, sweeps, barambolos, back takes, all this stuff. The guard game of Dolidze is very interesting to me in MMA. And I just think if he can force Vettori into positions where he has to think about things, slam him with kicks, land your shots, push a bit of a pace, and see if Vettori is willing to take you down, he could do big damage there. And talking about the scoring criteria, impactful striking. Everything that Dolidze throws is impactful striking. He doesn't give a shit about pitter-patter shots. He doesn't listen to Trevor Whitman, who says, let's take 25% off all of these and we'll get him out of here. He just wants to shotgun you with absolutely everything. And Vettori doesn't do that. He's a far more tactical fighter, will have a game plan set to him by Rafael Cordero, and he'll go out there and he'll just execute that game plan regardless of whether it's working or not. But I like Dolidze in this one.
I tend to think Vettori is maybe one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC because, like, he's a bit of a prick and people don't like him. And I think that does tend to happen. You know, the same thing happened with Colby Covington, but in a different way. I picked Vettori to win, but I think you might have convinced me there to change my pick on that one. It's an interesting fight. Who are you picking on that one, Spencer?
I'm picking Dolidze as well, and it's with the acknowledgement that Marvin Vettori has only lost to Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker in the last 4 years. So he's certainly entrenched as one of the top middleweights in the world now. Mileage on that and what it means varies depending on division. And you and I discuss these things all the time on the state of the UFC. But I just think what Harry said, people sort of forget that Roman Dolidze or didn't know prior to his fight with Jack Hermansson that this dude won ADCC Asia Oceanic Worlds. Dude is a for real grappler, and then comes into the UFC and is like, great, I'm going to be happy to just throw shots. And he had a couple stinkers in there. The Trevin Giles fight is a stinker. The Laureano Storiopoli fight is a stinker. But since then, this dude has just been like, you know what? I'm going to come out and be a great big burly human being and bash people. Marvin Vettori's always up for one of those. He's always up for, sure, let's just stand and throw. And I don't think Marvin Vettori has the power to put him away. And I think that makes for a bad night for Marvin Vettori.
Harry, your countryman Jack Shore moving up to 145, taking on Makwan Amirkhani. I think a lot of people are probably hoping this one hits the ground and we have a bit of jiu-jitsu going on. What's the face about? Go on, tell us.
I'm excited if this hits the ground. Harry does big smiley things if this hits the ground. And look, I mean, I'm kind of concerned for Jack Shore. Any fighter going up in weight who wasn't massively outsized for the division initially causes me, some concern.
Feels very reactionary, doesn't it? Just to the loss. I'm not the biggest fan of it, to be honest. But
right, I know that the cut is never going to be nice for somebody like Jack Shore to make 135, but he's never the most shredded guy. Now, that's obviously not an indication as to whether the cut is hard or not, but we've talked to Nathaniel Wood and we've learned about his cut and how drastic his cut was. He's a shredded guy at 135. Going up to 145 makes the world of sense. I think Makwan Amirkhani is a nice matchup for Jack Shore in that Makwan Amirkhani is never going to turn down a grappling exchange. Makwan Amirkhani will run across the cage and throw a flying knee without a shadow of a doubt inside 3 seconds. And after that, if he makes it out the first round, he's likely going to tire. And so for Jack Shore, who has cardio for days, isn't the biggest power puncher, but can do the grappling, it's a wonderful stylistic matchup for him. My issue is what happens after this, right? What happens after this is there's going to be a name. Is it Nathaniel Wood? When Nathaniel Wood's ready to come back in the frame and we finally see that fight that the people of the UK have been dying to see forever. Is there a Lerone Murphy name? Is there a enter the next guy that we can see at 145 for Jack Shore? But I feel like he is a more tactical, cerebral, skill for skill, better fighter than Makwan Amirkhani. But Amirkhani can do some mad bastardry things. And we know he loves an anaconda and a das. We know that he loves to sprint across the cage and put fellas to sleep if he can get hold of him. And if he has come in here and he wants to take this opportunity and he puts the road miles in and he can keep his gas tank going through 1 and 3, he can give Jack problems here without a shadow of a doubt.
I think this is going to be an easy one for Jack Shore, if I'm being honest. I just think he's a better striker.
I'm trying to sell it.
Muhammad Mokaev, Spencer, you spoke to him during the week. Obviously, one of the top prospects in the world, 8-0 now, fighting Jafel Fiallo. I went and I watched a few Jafel Fiallo fights yesterday before the betting show, and I've never been sure of a fight ever that Muhammad Mokaev is going to win this. Fiallo is like a slow wrestler with not much striking. Yes. He relies on his jiu-jitsu. He is absolutely fucked, isn't he?
He pretty much is. And if Mo is locked in and dialed in the way he has spoken about and spoke to me about, of like, look, I learned from the Malcolm Gordon fight. I can't be out there just pissing about. If he's locked in, if we get the, like, I'm just coming to handle business and make my statement, maybe 3 minutes. Like, it doesn't have to be wild, crazy Cody Durden jump and try to hit a flying knee while he's snatching a leg. You can go out and be technical and tactical, excuse me, and get this guy out of here in a heartbeat. And I think that's what happens. I mean, Mo is one of those guys that he started saying it more and more about the John Jones thing, about wanting to be the youngest champion. He's got essentially a year. It's March 25th next year that he needs to win the title by. That would be London. He likes that idea. He also likes the idea of just getting it done this year and wants to fight a top 10 guy next, and then wants to fight a top 5 guy and wants to fight 4 times this year. And good Lord, if you want to give me that kid fighting 3-4 times a year, letting him face every challenge that he wants to take, and we just figure out in a heartbeat whether he is as good as we think he is, bring it. Sign me up. Give me all of it. Give me another fight in 2 months. Give me another fight in 3 months. And let it be a step up in competition, because he's going to wreck this fool. And I have no problem with him accepting this fight. We talked about it in the interview. He wants to stay active. He doesn't want to sit around. He said, I don't understand these guys that are picking and choosing, and you don't want to fight. You don't want to feed your family. Great. Even tightened the seatbelt on the Muhammad Mokaev bandwagon when he says that. I just want to fight now, whoever it is. They say this guy, great. He's going to go out and trash this dude on Saturday. And we're going to sit here and go, just give him a top. Give him a top 10 guy next. Give him Brandon Royval.
He was calling out Tim Elliott as well, wasn't he? I'd like to see that.
He was talking about Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott said he would fight him, but Tim Elliott's hurt.
I don't give a shit. Put him in there.
Tape it up. Get him in there.
Get him in there.
It's like wrestling a muskrat.
Do it on the PlayStation. Lerone Murphy, Harry, he finally got a fight against Gabriel Sanders. I'm amazed they didn't try to get Paul Hughes in here, because what a fucking fight that would have been. But like, it feels like, look, we know.
I didn't even think of that, and you just gave me like a minor chest event.
Well,
Paul Hughes, like throw Paul Hughes in here short notice.
Fucking fight that would have been.
Why did not happen? Like,
Jesus.
I'm not the only one to think of that.
I am the biggest shitbag for not. How did I not?
I mean, I want better for Paul Hughes right out of the gate, rather than like short notice, not get any lead in, but like
get him in there.
I should have made it. Why didn't they call me?
Jesus.
I would have told them in 2 minutes. Like, I would have told them. Anyway, Lerone, like, it feels like Lerone, like, I think Lerone Murphy has as much upside as maybe not Mikhaev, but like, I think he is fucking brilliant. And do you know what? I still don't think people know. How good is he, Harry?
Really, really good. We talk about Leon Edwards, right? And how well put together he is and how much of a generalist he is and all that stuff. Lerone Murphy is that with a bit of Nando's seasoning on it. Just a bit of that peri-peri on it, right? Because we've got power. He has the defensive wrestling capabilities. We saw now. Look, Zubaira Takugov is a guy that can turn up and look great, turn up and look like an absolute fucking plastic bag. But against Lerone Murphy, he turned up and looked good. Like, gave Lerone some tests, forced Lerone to show us the defensive grappling capabilities. Not once did Zubaira get to really dominant pin positions against Lerone. Lerone was doing the right thing, sucking his hips out, keeping his elbows, building to posts, building back up, and that was on short notice. We now have another short notice replacement. And I asked Lerone in my conversation, he's had something like, I think he's had more pullouts than he has had fights across a professional amateur career. I said, how does that come? And he's like, that's kind of just who I am now. That's kind of just my style. That's one of the reasons why I've built a style so generalist like I have, is because I can't fucking tell you. I can't put a camp together for a specific person and train for a specific skill set because the cunts always pull out. And so I think for this one, it's an interesting test. Gabriel Santos, no joke. He knows how to fight. He knows what he's doing. He's got a bit of power. I just think, though, the footwork, the shot placement, the accuracy, the intelligence, the cerebral nature that Lerone searches for, I can't see him. I can see him either getting the miles in, getting 15 minutes, doing what he needs to do, or he's going to get him out of here inside 2. And there's going to be a name. There is going to be a name. Him and Nathaniel Wood are still fucking chirping at each other as of 25 minutes ago. They're still chirping at each other, talking about this, talking about that. And so, I don't know. If they want to do that fight, I'm here for it. I don't mind that whatsoever. But I feel like Lerone Murphy should be calling out a name with a number next to it after this.
Bryce Mitchell. That's the fight. I mean, let me see that one.
Elia Taporia is my name.
Oh, that was a fight I was thinking. I was like, but that's maybe too high at this stage.
Let's do it.
Dan Ige. That's the fight.
Oh, that's a good fight, actually. Yeah.
I'll take the veteran guy that's coming off a good win. It's coming off a really good performance where he smashed Damon Jackson, but he's a guy that he's headlined some events. Come to the States, fight him in Vegas. Co-main event at the Apex. Away you go.
One more name if we want to have some real fun. Movsar Evloev. Thanks very much.
Let's do it. The women's flyweights fights: Joanne Wood, Luana Carolina, Veronica Hardy, Juliana Miller. Anything from that there, Spencer, in the next 7 seconds you want to tell us about?
So I'm a little interested in Juju just to see how she continues to develop. She's 26 years old. She's had 4 fights. Like, we're just at the absolute infant stages of this. She showed some grit, some tenacity in the Tough House in winning that fight over Brogan Walker in the finale, pushed to get a finish. Those are things I like to see from a young fighter. She has a good jiu-jitsu background. Let's just see, right? Veronica Macedo, Veronica Hardy is 1-4 in the UFC. If you're any good, Juju, you come out and you have a good performance. We'll see what, Veronica Hardy can develop into, if she's added anything, improved anything, but like, what's that?
Dan Hardy's wife, is it?
It is Dan Hardy's wife. They got married in December. They got married on Christmas Day, I believe. So congratulations to the kids.
What a terrible time for a win.
But yeah, Juju's the only one that I'm interested in seeing here. Joanne Wood is just like, what do we got left?
She's favored to win this fight. I don't know much about Luana Carolina now, but she must be fucking shit.
I mean, she's the lady that got clobbered with the back elbow by Molly McCann last year.
Oh, there we go. Oh, what about Molly McCann versus Joanne Wood? Actually, that'd be a good fight. We have that at some stage. No,
I think this might be right off into the sunset for Joanne Wood.
Can we just talk about Christian Leroy Duncan now?
In a second. I want to leave him to last because he's the big one. But I'll throw this at you, right? Herbert, Hadley, Chris Duncan, Chris Patterson. I feel like out of all of those, Chris Patterson may be the most under talked about because he didn't come through like the cage, or he was on Brave and all of that.
And because his name is Sam Patterson.
What did I say?
Chris
Patterson, Sam Patterson. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, they're all the one.
That Patterson fella.
He did fight Kean Cowley and look good and beat him over in Brave. Hadley coming back off of the loss. He was a massive prospect, and I still think he is a massive prospect as well. I have a soft spot for Joy Herbert. I just think he's such a good fighter. And Chris Duncan, not to be confused with Christian Leroy Duncan, also a very, very, very good fighter. I think he like that Contender Series fight against Slava Klaus was, it did show like something that's very hard to forget what happened in that fight. But who and what are you most looking forward to out of those 4 fights, Harold?
Jake Hadley, without a shadow of a doubt. The reason for Jake Hadley is because, fuck me, on Cage Warriors, that boy was a destroyer, like an absolute destroyer. And I just don't know where that form has gone. I know that you go to Contender Series and there was some weirdness that happened, and maybe he did some things and said some things that the UFC didn't like and whatever. You then have a really tough weight cut, and you have the whole thing, the whole shebang. There's a lot of drama that's sort of surrounding, a lot of mess that's surrounding that sort of entrance to the UFC and then the UFC debut. You go out, you lose to a good guy, right? Not a scrub by any stretch of the imagination. Now, you've got another tough guy in Malcolm Gordon. Yes, Makayev blows through him, but Malcolm Gordon knows how to fight. He can do the thing that Hadley is good at, which is the wrestling. He's long. He can do some of the striking things. It's a nicer matchup than his first one out. But if Jake Hadley is still anywhere near the level that we saw in Cage Warriors, this is a fight he goes out and makes a statement in. This is a fight he goes out and afterwards on the mic, he says, look, lads, it didn't go how I wanted it to the last couple. We're here now. I'm settled. I'm under my feet. We're going. Let's do things. That's the one I'm interested in, really. And please, Jai Herbert, get a win. Please. Thank you. Please.
This is now 2 segments where you have echoed basically exactly what I've said on one question. So I'm wondering if you've gone and like previewed it, because Jake Hadley is the answer here. And it's for those exact reasons. He's the one of these 4 that has the swagger and has the personality and it's the Colby Covington assholeness to him, right? Like he has that gritty dickhead to him that you can get behind him. It's a little bit of the Darren Till, right? Part of the appeal of Darren Till is that Darren Till is a dickhead and you just want to love him because he's a lovable dickhead. And if Jake Hadley goes out, like I said on one question, you go out and beat this guy quicker than Mo did. You get on the mic and you say, you know what? Come here, big boy. You got a fight later today. You come out and you beat this fellow. Why don't you and me come and headline London later this year? Why don't we meet back here in 6 months' time and do this? Because I'm still here. As Harry said, didn't go well in the debut. That's fine. You lose to Alan Nascimento. It's fine. Just reset and get moving forward because he's got all the upside in the world.
Indeed, yeah. Darren Till was fun until he started hanging around with alleged murderous drug lords, and then I was kind of outing him at that stage. But Christian Leroy Duncan, God almighty, what a fighter. I feel like I've spoken about him maybe 3 or 4 times this week, and I might be building him up a little bit too much, because if he loses here, I'm going to look like the biggest fucking prick.
I'm trying to do I'm on the other side of that, of actively doing the, like, I don't want to let myself get excited.
Oh, I'm very excited. I don't care, because there's certain fighters you watch, and like I've watched him, obviously covered all the cards coming up through Cage Warriors and previews from him, and watched his opponents because he's been in big fights, and like the opponents they've put him in against, he's made them look shit, even though they're not. Like his last opponent, it was on like a 12-fight win streak over in Eastern Europe, fighting some tough motherfuckers, like lads with records of like 30-8 and shit like that, who've been around forever, and he made a mincemeat of him inside a round. Like Jadi Milan in the fight before that, who he beat, is a right good fighter. He's another guy who I picked to win the Cage Warriors title in his Cage Warriors debut, because I went back and watched his old fights and I knew how good he was. He's also faced like tests in terms of athletic tests. Justin Moore, not a great fighter, but a very good athlete. Will Curry becoming a very good fighter, but a great athlete as well, as we saw a couple, or as we will see this weekend, but we've seen previously as well. I just think there are no known weaknesses there. No known weaknesses. I love that phrase, but like, he can strike. He's good on the ground. His wrestling is good. He's a finisher. He's had some big main event fights now in Cage where he's kind of used to that. The only thing maybe was the UFC jitters. If he had gone in and fought and beat Jesse Taylor last time out, it would have been another thing. Okay, Jesse Taylor maybe not the same as what he used to be, but a very, very good wrestler. No one can deny that. That didn't happen, and he gets into the UFC. And they're putting him in against Dusko Todorovic, who is, okay, he's not the fucking best fighter in the world, but he's a guy whose name I know. And if I know him, he's somewhat good, or somewhat, talked about, because to actually know someone, especially in the middleweight division, that's an issue. And he knocked the fuck out of Jordan Wright in his last fight, beating Mackie Tapolo and a few other people. You know, not a bad fighter, not the easiest debut you could get in the middleweight division. And Christian Leroy Duncan is going to go in and I think destroy him. He's just brilliant all around, Harry, isn't he?
Look, Christian Leroy Duncan, I think we talked about this. I can't remember on what show, but we talked about this. If you want to bring a fighter through, this is the way you do it, right? You take him to a gym and you get him in with a guy that knows what he's doing, knows how to bring fighters through, and will not rush a guy. He had 485,000 amateur fights. He's learned in all of those fights, right, exactly what his weaknesses are, the positions that he likes, the positions that he doesn't like. And then when you watch him as a 7-0 pro, the fluidity with which he moves, the confidence with which he has to throw a variety of strikes is astounding. He switches so cleanly and so effortlessly through stances. He has an air, and this is a big bit of praise here, but he has an air of the MVP level of dynamism to him, but can actually do the defensive wrestling and the counter wrestling, and he has that well-rounded game. There's a real cerebral nature to the way that he fights and his willingness to be and go anywhere that the fight takes. MVP, we watch him and he knows that he has to stuff the takedown and then he'll land insane striking on you. Great. Christian Leroy Duncan makes it a mission to just meme lads, just absolutely shadow realm fellas with random stuff. The Jetty Milan fight was the one I was going to talk about because that dude is a ferocious athlete and can fight. He could do the wrestling. He had a gas tank. And Leroy Duncan was like, that's cool. I'm just going to wear you down for a while and then I'm going to fucking destroy you. Dusko Todorovic is a guy that stands really high. He's got a kickboxing background, looks a bit like a shit Stefan Struve, and will keep his chin up. And I think Leroy Duncan's going to find that chin. I really, really do. If I'm the UFC and if I'm Christian Leroy Duncan's team here, though, we go out, we do the Todorovic fight, and then give me one or two more. Let's not go immediately to the races. Let's go one or two more. Let's go a slow build, and then give me the guy at, early next year. He's 27. It's a good time for middleweight. We don't need to rush drastically. Let's build this guy the right way, because if we do, we've got an interesting fighter on our hands.
He like, if Bo Nickel was English, this is what he'd be. Has the Christian Leroy Duncan bandwagon reached the Great White North, Spencer?
No, and it should.
Oh.
It should, because the thing that stands out, and I really hope that the commentary team drills down on this first fight. I don't believe that they will. It's those 23 amateur fights. So you see him as 7-0 as a pro, and you go, this 7-0 undefeated. This is a dude that's had 30 fights. He's had 30 fights and he's 27 years old. So that confidence that Harry speaks of in winning and defending and looking as good as he did throughout the Cage Warriors run doesn't come from 7 fights. It comes from 30 fights. And so you stick a guy that's now had 30 fights and been through some stuff and had, as you said, Shawnee, prepared for some championship fights and prepared for some big moments. And Sean, in those moments, now coming in and he gets a home game against Dusko Todorovic, who, 3-3 in the UFC, beatable guy, winnable fight. Absolutely. This is, as I said, I'm trying not to let myself get too excited, because you and I want there to be a name at middleweight that comes up that is a young, emerging, quality talent. I think he can be it. I think he will be it, but I'm trying to not let myself get too excited. I need to just see it, go out, get this win. As Harry said, progress it along slowly through year 1, get a couple of fights, maybe go out and do the Ian Gary thing and get a 15-minute fight in or 2, and have those moments where you just accumulate the comfort in the octagon. But at some point, we're going to see this man against top 15 competition, and I think he has the skills to continue to climb from there.
Indeed. I can't wait for it. It is one of those cards where if you get like the 3 fights in a row, the Hadley, Christian Leroy Duncan, Leron Murphy, even for Muhammad Makhayev, if the 4 of them get 4 wins in a row, this crowd is going to be absolutely fucking lit by the time it gets to the very top. One thing I would say, and a slight issue, we talked about this before, I think we did a full podcast on this, and we might have even done a Speaker's Corner. The actual, how this card is laid out, there's no English fighter from Sam Patterson, who's, as we said, not the biggest star, all the way to the main event. Like, there's none in the co-main event. Barbara Gunnar Nelson, like Casey O'Neill from Scotland, but she's like Australian, isn't she? She's not really actually Scottish, like kind of half Scottish. Yeah, I think that's a bit of an issue. There probably should be one English fighter in there, just so that 4-win streak, if it happens there, another one could be added to it at the start of the main card, and then we go on to the main event. But anyway, it doesn't really matter, but I think that would have been probably smart. And maybe if Paddy Pimblett was fit, he would have been in that spot. So we can't complain too much about it. But a very, very good card. Go on, Harry, what were you saying?
Fuck the English. Up Jack Shaw.
I agree, but can't say it. We'll leave it there. Thank you to everybody for listening. Follow Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell. Follow Spencer Kite at Spencer Kite. Is that correct?
Nah, just Spencer Kite.
Is it Spencer Kite? Oh,
just Spencer Kite.
Follow SevereMMA. Follow at SevereMMA Pod. Don't bother fucking following me. Follow our Instagram as well. And we will leave it there. I'm Sean Sheehan. That was Harry. That was Spencer. This was the preview show. Shout out to Ian O'Neill. Shout out to Kilkenny. Shout out to all the boys over at Cheltenham. And we'll see you all next time.